2017 was an important year for Sonic the Hedgehog merchandise. It was the year Tomy finally released their first modern-styled Sonic products. After years of nothing but boom and eventually classic Sonic, it was nice to finally see a bit of a return to form, with the release of the Sonic & Knuckles comic packs. Released in summer 2017, these comic packs contained Archie comics, along with figures of both classic and modern Sonic & Knuckles. In the 2017 Tomy catalog, it was revealed that a second wave of these Archie comic packs would be released, containing figures of classic and modern Tails and Metal Sonic. Now, unfortunately, the Archie Sonic comics were discontinued shortly after the release of the first wave of comic packs, meaning that Tomy would be forced to remove them from future releases. Sonic & Knuckles were released with their comics included, however, it was uncertain whether the comic packs of Tails and Metal Sonic would be released. They certainly couldn't come with Archie comics, as Archie no longer has the license to reprint them, but we didn't know if they were going to be coming with a replacement comic or just as a standalone 2-pack. Well, we didn't have to wait long to get an answer. While they were originally set for release in September of 2017, the Tails and Metal Sonic comic packs of course had to be delayed to remove the Archie comics, but they were finally released in February of 2018. That's a pretty long delay. Were these worth the wait? How do they compare to the first wave of comic packs? Just what did they use to replace the Archie comics? Let's find out. Let's start by looking at the packaging the figures come in. The boxes for these guys are nearly identical to the boxes used on the first wave of comic packs. They come in a large rectangular dark blue box. It may seem oversized for two small 3-inch figures, but then again they had to fit a comic in here, so it makes sense. In the box you can clearly see the figures, some paper inserts, and a glimpse at the included comic. The box still features the same pixel style we've seen on previous Tomy products, and the names of the included figures can be seen as well. On the front of the box, there's an orange swirl graphic that reads, "Exclusive comic, 28 pages, which is actually pretty long for a pack-in comic. The sides of the box are nearly blank, with only some pixel details, as well as more text advertising the comic books in other languages. This text wasn't on the boxes of the first wave of comic packs, and I guess it's a nice addition. You can also see the Tomy logo on both sides as well. While the packaging has been fairly standard so far, the back is where the goods are. Again, this keeps the packaging in line with the first wave of comic packs, showcasing artwork and renders of both the classic and modern characters, along with flavor text describing the included character. I really like the artwork chosen for these. As always, I do wish they used 2D modern artwork, but I understand they probably wanted to showcase how different the classic and modern styles really are, so to make one 2D and one 3D probably helps with that. Anyway, the renders chosen for the modern characters and the artwork for classic Tails aren't too special, being generic stock art we've seen many times before, but the artwork used for classic Metal Sonic caught my eye. This looks like new artwork for him that hasn't been used previously. It seems like Sega recently made a new batch of classic styled artwork, and we've seen quite a few new pieces be released recently. I hope all of this new art gets publicly released soon because it all looks really good. The text under the character art describes the included character. The descriptions on the Sonic & Knuckles packs, in my opinion, were a little wordy and seemed a little too overcomplicated for the packs they were included on. But what about these? Well, Tails' description reads, "Tails is a dual-tailed fox and the best friend of Sonic. He is earnest and innocent and the embodiment of a sidekick. Forever the strategist, Tails is a prolific tinkerer, but not always a successful one. His inventions always show a lot of potential, ingenuity, and dedication. However, they often backfire. Tails proves himself endearing to both his teammates and to fans alike." Okay, that was pretty alright. Still a good amount of big words that I'm sure the 4+ demographic these are made for would not be able to read, and I'm not sure why they just straight up made fun of Tails. Like, oh yeah, most of his inventions are failures, but anyway. I think Metal Sonic's description is a lot better. It reads, "This dangerous robot is one of Dr. Eggman's greatest creations. With his razor-sharp metallic quills and a turbine that allows him to rocket forward at insane speeds, Metal Sonic is one of the toughest opponents Sonic has ever had to face. Watch out." Yeah, that's pretty good. A bit of a weird fit for these figures though, as the two descriptive points they bring up for Metal, his metallic look and jet engine, are things they omitted from these figures. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Overall, just like the first wave, the packaging for these figures does a great job at enticing people to buy these packs. The figures look nice posed in front of these color-coded swirls, the comic covers showing in the back make the overall pack look so cool, and the back of the packaging gives people maybe not familiar with Sonic some context as to who these characters are. Doesn't give context as to why a pack of 2 Tails figures exists, but hey, it sure says he's prolific. The packaging gets the job done. But I think it's time we open the box and take a look at the goods inside. Before looking at the figures, let's take a look at the included comics. The comics come sealed in bags, which is a nice touch. However, the packaging does slightly warp the comics, as you can see here. Seems the box is just a little too small to hold them in straight, causing this to happen. The bags are just sealed with a little piece of tape, so let's remove them and slide the comics out. So, here they are, the non-Archie comic books included in these comic packs. But what exactly are they? They're not Archie, and it's too early for them to be IDW Sonic, so what are these? Well, as it turns out, these comics are physical prints of the online exclusive Sonic Channel series Sonic Comic that was released online in 2016 for the 25th anniversary. It was a series of one-shot slice-of-life stories published on Sonic Channel, in Japanese. Each of the 25 episodes showcased a different Sonic character in daily life scenarios. So yes, these are as good as they sound. I remember back in 2016 being really excited for each new episode, as the comic has many references and callbacks to features of the Sonic series that are often forgotten. These comics, Hero and Rival, are new fully translated English collections of the episodes, and these are exclusive to the figure comic packs. You will not be able to buy them separately, giving a lot more incentive to buy these packs than if they were simply Archie reprints. Hero, which comes in the Tails pack, contains episodes 1 through 13, while Rival, which comes in the Metal Sonic pack, contains episodes 14 through 25, as well as a bonus Special Zone wrap-up issue. Before looking at the comics themselves, let's look at the covers. The artwork used here is from the comics themselves, only this time in full color. When they were originally released on Sonic Channel, the comics weren't colored, but of course to make these covers look flashy, they had to color them in. The comics inside are unfortunately still just black and white, but the artwork looks great. These covers look really good. Hero shows Sonic and Tails doing their thing, while Rival shows Metal Sonic and Eggman. The covers are drawn well, colored nicely, and they're even connected. You have to overlap them a bit, but they do form one image, which is really cool. The covers have the Sonic the Hedgehog logo at the top, and next to it is the Sonic Team logo, as these comics were created by them in-house. There is also a Sonic the Sketchhog above their logo, which is a fantastic detail. And below that it reads either Part 1 of 2 or 2 of 2 for Hero and Rival respectively. The first page of each part gives some context to the following stories. Sonic Comic is a short webcomic series released on the Japanese Sonic website to celebrate Sonic's 25th anniversary. In each episode, one of the heroes or rivals from Sonic's universe will be spotlit as the main character. Below that, there are the credits of the people who helped bring this all together. These guys did an awesome job with these. I was originally going to go through every episode, or act as they're called, but I realized that would take way too much time, and most of you watching are probably only interested in the figures anyway. I'll make a separate video sometime down the line solely on these comics, as I definitely feel they are worth discussing, but that'll be for a later time. These comics are fantastic though. Like I said, these are slice-of-life Sonic stories, so it shows the characters in their daily lives. Shadow's story involves him thinking about his past, Vector's story is about him looking for his missing pudding, Amy bakes cupcakes and burns her house down, Chao fight each other, Tikal plays hide-and-seek with Chaos, Orbot and Cubot explore the deep and rich lore of the Sonic the Hedgehog series. It's all just a fantastic read, and almost makes these packs worth buying alone. These comics, while available online, physically are exclusive to the comic packs. After Archie Sonic was cancelled, Tomy had to quickly put something together in order to have a comic to release in these packs. I imagine they contacted Sega or Sonic Team and they were like, oh well, we have these short stories we made for the 25th anniversary, let's use them. And now we have these. And honestly, I'm glad we got these instead of Archie comics. Tails' comic pack was to come with an issue from the Tails miniseries from the 90s, while Metal Sonic was to come with Sonic Universe issue 50. While that certainly would have been cool, having fully exclusive comics is a much better inclusion than what an Archie re-release would have been. I'm a huge fan of these comics, and definitely a fantastic bonus to go with the figures. In fact, I actually think the comics are a much better reason to buy the packs than the figures themselves, because, well, let's talk about them. The modern Sonic & Knuckles figures, in my opinion, are really good. They're solid, they look just like the characters, and they look great on display. Tomy clearly wasn't going for a highly articulated figure, and instead went for more of a display piece. The figures look really good. While they were packed with their classic counterparts, which did unfortunately see some downgrades compared to their 25th anniversary releases, I felt the modern figures made the packs well worth buying. So, can the same be said for Tails and Metal Sonic? Well, these are definitely a harder sell than Sonic & Knuckles. Let's start with the Tails pack. Here are the two figures that come in the Tails pack, Classic and Modern Tails. I'll start with Classic Tails. This guy was first released in 2016 as part of the 25th anniversary line. This version of him was originally released in a comic book pack with Classic Sonic as well as Archie Sonic issue 25. So is this a straight re-release? Well, not exactly. With the Classic Sonic and Knuckles figures in the 2017 comic packs, they saw some pretty noticeable downgrades compared to their original releases, namely a worse paint job, lack of shiny paint on their gloves and shoes, and overall the quality control on them was just not as good as the originals. Their colors weren't as vibrant, people reported that their figures broke really easily, they were a step down from the original releases for sure, but they were still technically good figures, just not as good as they were originally. Is Classic Tails the same way? Yeah, basically. The colors all appear to be the same, but unfortunately the paint on the new Tails is sloppier, and all of the white parts on 25th Tails were shiny and smooth, while on the new Tails they're flat and rough. The main problem with him though is actually due to how the figure is packaged in the box. The Classic Tails figure relies a lot on its tails to stand. They help balance the figure, which is a pretty smart design. Unfortunately, in the packaging, Tails' tails are pushed upwards, meaning by the time you take him out of the box, his tails will be a little higher than his feet, meaning he can't stand flat on the ground. Now he'll either fall over or balance on his tails with his feet slightly in the air, which is not nearly as natural as it looked on the 25th Tails release. This is a pretty big issue, and seems to be an oversight by the packaging designers. You can bend his tails to get them a little more flush with his feet, but this really shouldn't be a problem in the first place. But that's really all there is to say on Classic Tails. His articulation is still really good, his sculpt still looks great, but just like with the re-release of Classic Sonic and Knuckles, the quality just isn't as good as it once was. But at least the figure still looks really good. Modern Tails, not so much. This guy just doesn't look good. I'll just get right into it. It's the legs. His legs cut halfway up his torso. That looks really bad. If you didn't know, Tails' legs do not in fact cut up his chest fur like this. I have no idea why they designed the figure this way. They probably could have easily made his torso a little longer, and that would have solved it. Sonic and Knuckles' legs do cut into their stomach a bit, but their torsos are long enough to make that look good. What's interesting is that the concept art for this figure, which was shown in the 2017 Tomy catalog, shows his legs going into his stomach like in the final figure. I remember seeing this and hoping the final figure wouldn't look like it, but it does. The concept art is pretty well drawn, but I have no idea why they would have intentionally designed the figure like this. And it's a huge shame too, because the rest of the figure actually looks pretty good, but the legs almost completely ruin it. Tails here is posed, unlike Sonic and Knuckles. It seems Tomy is going to make a majority of their modern figures posed, as can be seen with most of the 2018 figures, as well as modern Metal Sonic. I'm totally okay with the figure being pre-posed as long as it looks good. These figures don't have a ton of articulation, so it makes sense to give them a pose that they can be displayed in. It does limit the options of posing you have, but less articulation does that anyway. So, what are the positives to this guy? Well, his head is actually pretty much perfect. His expression looks great, the proportions on stuff like his muzzle and ears look just right, and overall it's shaped really well. His mouth is opened and his tongue is even sculpted and painted in. That's some great detail. His hands are also really well sculpted. Tails is posed with one arm up, with his hand pointing. The hand is surprisingly well sculpted, and his other hand is opened, meaning yes, we have the grand return of these Tomy figures being able to hold the Boom Enerbeams, meaning Oil Tails himself finally has an Enerbeam partner, so I guess this modern Tails is at least good for that. Tails' legs are pretty thick, which not only looks disproportionate, but also is what leads to his stomach being cut so much. Tails' legs move forwards and backwards, which is only possible through his torso being cut like this. As you can see, Tails is stepping. The pose is a little awkward, but I guess it works. You can't move his legs too far back though, as his body gets in the way. It doesn't really matter though, as his non-rotatable tails would have done the same anyway. His tails use the same technique as the classic Tails, with one being larger than the other. That worked on classic Tails as they were to the side, and it gave off a pretty nice optical illusion. But here, it's kinda pointless. It looks weird, and both tails should have been the same length, since they're just going backwards. Tails' shoes look good, just like his hands. As for articulation, it's the same as modern Sonic and Knuckles. His head can move left and right, his arms can move all around, but his legs can only move forwards and backwards, and they're very limited. His tails can't rotate, and neither can his hands or shoes. So, is this modern Tails figure a disappointment? Yes, absolutely. After seeing modern Sonic and Knuckles, It seemed Tomy was dead set on making good-looking figures first and foremost, but now, I'm not so sure. This figure doesn't look good. I haven't come across anyone who has seen this guy and hasn't immediately said, whoa, what's wrong with his legs? While it's still an okay Tails figure, it could have been so much better with just a little more revisioning, and sadly, he doesn't even look that good next to Sonic and Knuckles. Since his torso is so short, he's the height of a classic figure. Tails is shorter than Sonic, yes, but not this short. As a whole, this Tails comic pack is a disappointment. Classic Tails is a downgraded re-release, and modern Tails doesn't look that great. The comic included is fantastic, but the main drive to buy these should be the figures. But what if I told you this wasn't the first time Tomy Modern Tails was released? And actually, when he was first released, he was even worse. It's November 2017. Sonic Forces was just released. What is Tomy to do but release a special Sonic Forces 4-pack of figures, complete with collector prints. This pack was exclusive to GameStop locations in the US, and contains figures of Modern Sonic, Modern Knuckles, Classic Sonic, and what was at the time exclusive to this pack, Modern Tails. The pack also included 4 special prints of concept art from the game. Now these are pretty cool. They come in a protective slip with the Forces logo on it, and are printed on a sturdy cardstock. The back of each piece shows the Forces logo as well. All of these concept art pieces were available online before the game's release, so it's not like there's any exclusive content here, but these are nice to have. However, the figures? Well, Modern Sonic and Knuckles are just the comic pack releases, as is Classic Sonic, but the quality on these guys is really not that great. My Classic Sonic's paint job looks horrible, and the articulation of some joints just doesn't work. My Modern Sonic's head feels like it'll snap off if I move it too far, and Classic Sonic's legs are stuck in place. The complete lack of quality control here was just about confirmed with Modern Tails. Spot the issue? Maybe you missed it. His chest fur? Yeah, it's tan. How did this even happen? Don't they have official color codes that prevent stuff like this? The figure already looked pretty bad in the stomach area. How did a mistake this big slip through? The prototype of this figure, which can be seen in product images of both this pack and the comic pack, show the figure with white chest fur. So this had to have been some sort of last-minute mess-up. It's super unfortunate, and turned so many people off of this Modern Tails figure. Thankfully though, Tomy quickly fixed him up for future batches of the Forces pack, and every future release of Modern Tails has white fur. I guess that makes this tan fur Tails a limited first print exclusive? Maybe I should be thankful to have this guy. It's kinda like what happened with the first release of Jazzwares' Tails, how they accidentally stuck his tails on upside down, and the first release of Jazzwares' Tails didn't have rotatable tails either, making the figure impossible to stand on its own. Whoops. While the Tails pack was certainly disappointing, this Metal Sonic comic pack had the potential to be something really cool. Does it live up to our expectations? Well, sort of. It's better than Tails at least. One thing special to this comic pack in comparison to the previously released Tomy comic packs is that there's no re-released figure here. Both Modern and Classic Metal Sonic here are brand new and exclusive to the pack. This not only makes it an easier buy for collectors, but it also just makes the pack stand out more and overall makes it way more appealing. But are the figures any good? Well, the first thing you'll notice is the lack of metallic paint on them. This was the case on the Boom Metal Sonic figure, so I did expect it here. But come on, is metallic paint really that much of a premium? Why couldn't they have gone the extra mile to make these guys really shine? They have flat paint all around, which makes their silver parts look especially bad, as they're simply gray. Paint seems to be the main issue with these, as their sculpts are actually pretty solid. They're both in cool poses, looking like they're ready to battle. Their arms and legs are bent, but they can still move. Their articulation is about what you'd expect. Classic Metal Sonic does actually have the full leg movement as the other classic figures do, but unlike those, his hands and shoes can't rotate, which is a pretty big letdown. Modern Metal Sonic has the same articulation as the other modern figures, but this time his legs don't cut too much into his torso given his design, which is good. While the figures are clearly sculpted to be in a specific pose, they can still pull off different poses, like running or flying poses. I actually like these figures quite a bit. Classic Metal Sonic is definitely the better sculpt than Modern Metal Sonic, as Modern Metal Sonic actually looks a little goofy, but both of them are alright. I do wish their paint was better though. The Boom figures had this Platinum series line where they did metallic variants of some of the characters, and yes, a metallic Metal Sonic was included in that. While they definitely should have been like that from the start, it would be interesting to see these guys made with metallic coloring. They'd probably look a lot better with it. Their sculpts deserve better paint jobs than this. They have lots of nice details sculpted in, like their fingers being fully positioned, their stomach engines having sculpted in grooves, their shoes being layered, and their jet engines being fully sculpted, but not at all painted. You know, I'm not even that disappointed because I completely expected it. The Boom Metal Sonic figure has the same issue. Again, would it really have been too much to ask to have this painted in? It's kinda sleazy to not paint in details that aren't noticeable until you buy them and take them out of the box. This is a horrible practice, and I really hope we don't see any future figures in this line do stuff like this. When it comes to Metal Sonic, paint job really can be everything. For example, here's the Jazzwares 3-inch classic Metal Sonic figure. If you followed the Jazzwares Sonic line, you'd know that by the end of it, releases got pretty rough. Figures had poor quality control, joints didn't work or broke easily, and the paint job got really sloppy. No figure displays this more clearly than their classic Metal Sonic figure. This guy was released in a 6-pack containing 5 other previously released figures. Metal Sonic was exclusive. This instantly made people think, oh, they're using Metal Sonic as a cash grab, aren't they? These figures had been out for years. Why couldn't Metal Sonic have been released on his own? Well, it's probably because no one would have bought him on his own. This figure is pretty bad. Probably my least favorite figure Jazzwares released in their 3-inch Sonic line. His paint job is pretty similar to the Tomy figures, but is even more sloppy. They missed more details such as his stomach paint, and overall the figure feels very cheap. My figure's leg joint here can't even move as there's too much paint, which fused with the joint rendering it unusable. But it seems classic Metal Sonic wasn't always supposed to be released this way. What you're looking at is a potentially one-of-a-kind factory sample prototype of the 3-inch classic Metal Sonic figure. As you can see, he's fully painted in a sleek metallic style, with all of his details properly painted. I was able to acquire this figure from an eBay seller in China, who had a number of other factory leftover Jazzwares figures up for sale. They actually had some other prototypes or figure molds up for sale as well. I got this Metal Sonic prototype for an incredible $12, and he looks absolutely amazing. His paint job is very similar to their modern Metal Sonic figure, which also looks very good. Without this proper paint job, Metal Sonic looks like a cheap throwaway, but with it all included, he looks legitimately intimidating and very cool. My point here is that a figure's paint job can be very important, especially with the case of characters like Metal Sonic, who need a proper paint job in order to look good. The Tomy figures still look fine, but they don't look nearly as good as they could. Metal Sonic is supposed to be a cold-hearted killing machine. He just doesn't look right with bright flat colors. Just the idea of this pack is cool alone. A pack of 2 Metal Sonics? Who could possibly resist that? It's just a shame the figures don't quite live up to such an ambitious idea. The Sonic & Knuckles comic packs really set expectations high with future Tomy releases. Those figures were so great and came at a time when everyone was missing modern Sonic figures. While it's clear these aren't quite as good as the Sonic & Knuckles figures, I think the Metal Sonic pack is at least worth considering. The Tails pack is really only for completionists though, especially since modern Tails is available in other cooler packs, such as the 3-pack with Chao. The comics though are a really good read. They're full of lots of references, and you basically see every modern series Sonic character in them. Marine the Raccoon makes a cameo, for example. If you're a huge fan of Sonic, these comics will definitely entertain you. But as good as these comics are, I can't say they justify the $16.99 price of the packs. If the figures were just a little better, then I'd say they are absolutely worth it. The Sonic & Knuckles packs were easy sells. I'd highly recommend those to anyone, if you can still find them. These though, not so much. Though, it is true that in the box they all look pretty sweet together, and it's really satisfying seeing all 4 of these lined up together. So if you're a boxed collector, sure, these are worth getting for your collection. If you're looking for figures to play with, I guess they're good for that as well, but the articulation and posing options are pretty lacking. If you're getting them for display, that's up to you. The Sonic & Knuckles figures are great display pieces, but these, especially modern Tails, are definitely more of an acquired taste. In any case, these are seemingly the last comic packs we'll be seeing from Tomy, as the next figure 2-pack we'll be seeing in this style is classic and modern Amy and Eggman, who won't be coming with comics, but instead they come with metallic plates with exclusive artwork on them. Who knows how those will turn out? We'll just have to wait and see. But for now, I think things are only gonna go up for Tomy Sonic this year. We still have lots of figures coming out, all of which look better than modern Tails, so that's good. While these packs were a bit disappointing in some aspects, I still have high hopes for the future of Tomy Sonic.